do so.
Recording in progress.
Thank you, Zoom. So welcome everyone to Mentoring Best Practices. Let's do it. As always, guys, I invite you to pop any questions into the chat box. I'm going to ask you a few questions today, so get ready to light up that chat box as we go through, please. That would always be fun. You can find a bunch of these other webinars that we've recorded on our YouTube channel. Simply search Coachology on YouTube and you'll find probably about 40 webinars, more than 100 hours worth of content on our YouTube channel. So take a look through. There's all sorts of leadership and coaching and personal development content there. As I mentioned, a lot of the organizations that I've been working with lately, especially, companies like Michelin and Maxis down here, plus many others, they're asking me specifically about mentoring programs, the programs that we can help mentors mentor effectively, right? We did a great session with our Banyan Tree Hotels where we took some of their senior leaders and shared with them specific mentoring tools and techniques to help them with their junior subordinates. So here's what we're going to look at today: building a balanced leadership development matrix. I have touched on the leadership development matrix as a concept in previous webinar, maybe 4 months ago, 5 months ago. So we'll look at it again today in the context of mentoring. We're going to look at the qualities of a great mentor. So chances are on your leadership journey, you have been mentored by someone great, someone awesome, someone that you respected and admired. What was it that made them a great mentor? That's what we're going to look at, because as you get into that place where you will be mentoring others, of course, we want you to have those same qualities as well. The two biggest traps that many mentors fall into. So with that awareness, we don't need to fall into those traps anymore. Delegation, not just delegation, effective delegation is a mentoring superpower, right? There's a lot of, there's a symbiotic relationship between effective mentoring and effective delegation. So we'll look at that, how you can not only be a better mentor, but also be much, much better at delegation as well, which is good for you and it's good for your team and good for the business. And then we're going to wrap up with 5 tips for best mentoring, plus any other questions and concerns you might have. So let us start with the leadership development matrix. So if you're seeing this for the first time, this is a suggested matrix that you can follow to develop your own leadership. Or if you are the leader of leaders, perhaps you're a managing director or GM or CEO, or you aspire to be one, at some point in time, you are going to be a leader of leaders. So those same leaders, you want to be able to support them to implement this leadership development matrix. So on one axis, we have problem and solution. And on the other axis, we have telling and asking. Now, most traditional leaders are spending most of their time down in this bottom left-hand quadrant, where they're focusing a lot on the problem that's happening in the organization, whatever that might be, and they're often simply telling their teams what to do. So it's very kind of hierarchical. It's very kind of like, do as I say, don't do as I do this, do that, and then so on. And so that comes across as telling or demanding, but it also shows up as blaming and complaining. Now, my question to you guys, please have that chat box ready. Here we go. Here's the first question. What percentage of the time do you think most traditional leaders are spending down here in this bottom left-hand quadrant? What percentage of the time are most leaders spending in that bottom left-hand quadrant? If you can put your answers into the chat box, please, guys. Sue Chi says 80%. Let's get a few more answers, guys. What percentage of the time are most leaders spending in that bottom left-hand quadrant? Thank you, iPhone DC says 70%. Anthony says 75%. G'day, Anthony. Any more guesses, guys? 90%. Yeah, about 70%, 85%, 90%. Awesome, guys. Yep, there we go. Keep them coming. Charles, g'day. Gerald, hi, Gerald, 80%. Very good. You guys are pretty accurate. So the correct answer is 80%, and there have been studies to show this statistic. So we're not just pulling it out of the air. So clearly, this is more of perhaps an older style of leadership. Do this, do that, and do this. Now, clearly, that becomes a challenge. Think about this. If you're working in that kind of environment where the leader is always telling you what to do, then the whole team is limited to that level of the leader, because no one questions the leader, no one shares their questions or concerns or ideas or everything, because it's very do this, do that, do this. So what you want to do for yourself and what you want to encourage other leaders to do in your organization is you want to develop a balanced leadership development matrix. So let's take a look at the other quadrants. The top left-hand side here is what I call facilitation, where you might be focusing on a problem to start with, yet as quickly as you can, you're going to shift the focus towards the solution. Now, check this out though here, guys. You see facilitation being in the top left. Yes, it might be focused on a problem or a challenge or a situation, but even if you know what the problem is as the leader, you're not going to tell the team what the problem is. Instead, you are going to ask questions, right? Yes, does it take a little bit of time? Yes, it does. But remember, that is an investment of time, and you'll get your return on investment in that time. So facilitation, think of brainstorming sessions. Think of any kind of group work where you're doing some kind of problem solving. It could be project work where you're working with a group. It could be when you're working on your specific KPI in your department, right? Whether it's your monthly goals or quarterly or yearly goals, whatever they are, often you're doing it as the group and you're kind of facilitating the process. You're leading the process, yet you're not telling them what to do, right? You're asking questions to elicit first of all, the root cause of if there is the problem, right? The 5 why analysis or root cause analysis, or however you want to get to the root cause. You're going to ask lots of questions. Even if you think you know what the answer is, you're going to invest that time, because why? It helps your team and supports your team to think critically, right? So that's facilitation. Any kind of group work is happening over there. Now, here's mentoring. That's what our focus is today. So mentoring is a good mentor will tell you what to do, but will be focused more on the solution. So a classic example of this is if a new member of the team, a new employee has just joined the organization, they don't know what they don't know. So you can't be asking them too many questions at the beginning. You'll be doing some onboarding with them. You'll share with them a job description, which is almost like a recipe or a step-by-step process of what they need to do. They'll probably review some standard operating procedures of this is how you need to do. They'll probably attend a few internal trainings to understand the systems and the processes. And then you as the leader, you are certainly going to share with them some best practices, some tips and tricks. You're going to tell them how to get results more quickly. Why? Because you don't want them to fumble around figuring it out from themselves. You don't want them to suffer through the trial and error of making all of those mistakes. No, you know how to achieve the results that this new employee is looking to achieve. So you're going to share them and show them and tell them those best practices to accelerate their integration within your team. So it's focusing towards the outcome and the solution. And yes, you're guiding them, you're showing them, you're telling them what to do. Now that leaves us with the final quadrant to the coaching. Yeah. Sue Chi says, just as a quick question there, doesn't this happen more in large bureaucratic types of organizations, less so in startups? I would say that's accurate, Sue Chi, that yes, it's less, it's happening less. in more modern thinking, startup kind of industries at the moment. Correct. All right, so coaching. So I want to touch on coaching very, very quickly. The question is, put your answers in the chat box. What percentage of the time are most leaders coaching their teams at the moment, right? Because we're going to see, guys, there's a strong relationship between coaching and mentoring. So here's the question. Answers in the chat box, please. What percentage of the time are most leaders coaching their teams at the moment? Quickly pop your answers into the chat box, please. 15 to 20% coaching. Yep, give me a few more, guys. Give me a few more. What percentage of the time are most leaders coaching their teams at the moment? Yep, keep them coming, guys. Keep them coming. 30, 10. Yep. Very good. Shockingly, the answer is 1% of the time. And again, this is probably the larger organizations, the multinational organizations. Certainly not all, right? Certainly many of the organizations that I'm working with, where they're investing in training to deliver leadership coaching style of programs, they're definitely aiming that, because where you want it to aim for, guys, in the beginning is a leader, a modern leader will want to coach his or her team 10 to 20% of the time. Now, that leads us to the question for mentoring, guys. In this section here, the mentoring section, what percentage of the time do you think most traditional leaders are mentoring their teams? Right? Same question, but for mentoring, what percentage of the time do you think leaders are mentoring their teams? 7%, 15%. Give me a few more numbers, guys. Give me a few more numbers. 10%, 5%, 2%, 20 to 30%, 20%, 5%. Love your answers, guys. Thanks for sharing. I estimate about 5% of the time. And let me clarify that statement. A lot of the time, and I've fallen into this trap, especially when a new employee comes into the organization or into my team, I will often have someone else show them the ropes. I'll often have someone else to take care of that day-to-day training and the guidance and the mentoring. I normally have that to hand that or delegate that to someone else. So the actual mentoring that a leader will do to the next level down is pretty minimal. And again, this is what a lot of these organizations, the proactive organizations, they're realizing now that they are not mentoring enough. Think about this. The mentor, by definition, and we'll clarify the exact definition in a moment, the mentor is the expert. They have the skills and the capability and a proven strategy on how to achieve results. So they should be spending more time with those people who need it. So as a goal, guys, my suggestion would be to aim towards 20 to 30% of your time mentoring your teams. Now, what we're looking for here, guys, remember, is a balanced leadership development matrix. So if we've got 20 to 30% of your time mentoring, 10 to 20% of the time coaching, where coaching is asking questions and solution focused. Of course, that can grow a little bit more depending on the size of your team and so on. That then leaves you about 20 to 30% of facilitation, which remember is the group work. All right. And guess what? We do still need to tell our teams what to do from time to time, right? If the building is on fire, I'm not going to say, what do you think we should do? No, I'm absolutely going to take charge and tell everybody what to do as quickly as I can. So what you're looking for here, guys, is a balanced leadership development matrix with roughly 20 to 30% in each of those quadrants. Obviously, depending on your organization, the size of your team, the industry, and so on, but you get the point. All right. Now, we're here to focus on mentoring, so let's dig a little bit deeper. Here's the clear definition. Mentoring is a professional relationship in which an experienced person, the mentor, assists another person, the mentee, in developing specific skills and knowledge that will enhance their personal and professional development. Now, here's the thing. You can have multiple mentors. You can have a mentor for this, you can have a mentor for that, you can have a mentor for something else. Your mentor does not need to be a guru in every single area of life. That kind of person is pretty hard to find. So what you want to find is a mentor that is really, really good. Not like just a little bit good, but really, really good at that specific set of skills or knowledge that you want to learn, right? So for example, many years ago, I got promoted to be the general manager of a 5-star boutique hotel. Suddenly now I was in charge of preparing all of the budget for the hotel operation. What revenues are going to come in, what expenses are going to go out, and what is the bottom line profit. Well, I knew nothing about accounting. I could barely fumble my way through a spreadsheet. This is like 15 years ago. So what did I do? I checked my circle of friends. One of them was a chartered accountant. He knew numbers very, very well. And so for about 1 or 2 hours each week, him and I would meet together, and he educated me, he coached me, he mentored me on how to create a P&L, profit and loss sheet, how to read and interpret a balance sheet, and how to prepare a budget, right? So in 3 short months, I went from zero to having a pretty good understanding of how to run the numbers in the hotel operation. Something like that, guys, if I had done that by myself, it would have taken years and years. That trial and error, that mentoring removes all of that. Now, for those of you in organizations, please know that if you're looking to implement a coaching culture, an effective coaching culture, it's not just about coaching, right? You need leadership development. You need good communication and EQ skills, which will come under training. Obviously, you want to start coaching your teams, but you also need mentoring in there as well. If you want to create an empowered workforce of people that are able to think for themselves and solve their own problems, and the teams that are accelerating their growth. Now, let's take a look at some qualities of a great mentor. So again, you can think now, because I'm going to ask you to pop into the chat box in a moment. I'm sure that you've had 1 or 2 mentors, maybe more, in your life. What was the characteristic or quality of the mentor that really stood out for you? Kindly pop that into the chat box now, and I'll get the ball rolling. Okay, so the qualities of a great mentor, in my experience, they walk the talk. So that knowledge that they're really, really good at, it's not just intellectual knowledge. They actually embody that skill or that knowledge, and they actually walk the talk. It's not intellectual fluff. It's not just theory. It's actually a proven application. Again, this is simply my experience, guys, and my point of view. The best mentors that I've had the pleasure to be able to work with, they actually utilize a blend of a little bit of telling and a little bit of asking. So in other words, they're not strictly mentoring all of the time. They're not just tell, right? They will tell, and then they'll ask some questions, right? Then they might tell, and then they'll ask another question, and then they'll tell, and then they'll ask another question. So they know the importance to integrate the learnings. Think of it almost like a pop quiz, right? They're going to ask questions along the way. So often a really good mentor also has coaching skills in his or her repertoire or toolbox of leadership knowledge. They share proven strategies, tips, and tricks, right? They're not just making this stuff up. So they've walked the talk, and they've got results in their life, especially in that specific area, right? So I've had mentors in accounting. I had a mentor in marketing. I had a mentor in public speaking. I had a mentor coach, right? So I've used different mentors who are very skilled in a very, very specific area, and they had proven results, right, that were verifiable and easy to measure. And they're the mentors that I seek out. All right, now you've lit up the chat box here for me, guys. Thank you for that. What else have we got here? Commitment. They lead by example. They are self-confident. They are an informer. Yeah, oh, that's a nice one, Sue. They openly share, right? They're like an open book. None of this like, this is my secret sauce and I'm not going to share anyone. No, 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 no. It's not like that at all. They're like an open book. They do have good listening skills. Informed, yeah, they know their stuff, and they like to transfer knowledge and know-how, right? So they enjoy the process. Nice one, Marcel. They enjoy the process of uplifting others, because if they don't have that, then what's the point, right? They'll just sit in the closet and not contribute to the world. Yeah, a genuine heart. Ooh, oh, you guys are good at this. Thank you. So yeah, spot on, guys, exactly what you shared there. I like to think that they are open and honest. Again, from my experience, the best mentors, they are open and they are honest, right? What do I mean by honest? Is they don't sugarcoat things. If I'm making a mess of it, you know, in whatever reason, if I'm messing it up, they're going to tell me straight, right? So they're open about that, and they're very, very direct and honest in their communication. They're not afraid to give me direct feedback when I need it, which is often. Now, if you are looking for that mentor, there's got to be some level of respect there. If you don't respect them, gosh, then that transfer of that knowledge is going to be a little bit difficult. So if that's what you're looking for in a mentor, remember, if you are going to be that mentor and you've got that mentor hat on, please, you know, lead by example and be someone that they can actually respect and look up to. That's something about your characteristic and who you are. They are very good delegators. They are very, very good at delegating. They don't make it a drama and a song and a dance. They're just really, really good and effective at delegation, which is what we're going to touch on next. But there's a few more comments there. Yeah, they have a mentoring mindset, exactly. Integrity, yes. And that is spot on for one of those things. Awesome. Great. Okay. So you guys are getting the point here. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So yeah, let's expand on point number 7 here. They're great delegators. Before we get to the delegation part, there are 2 traps. 2 traps for mentors. Can anyone guess? What do you think the 2 traps for mentors might be? So again, this is for you as you're considering to mentor your teams. What do you think the 2 traps might be? Does anyone have a guess? For a virtual gold star, if I had one. Anyone have a guess? I know anything. Tech skills and people skills. Overly responsible. Yeah, pretty good. Good effort, guys. Good effort. In my experience, again, right? And again, there are books written on this stuff, I'm sure. There are whole workshops dedicated to this. I'm just sharing my life's experience for my brief 48 years on the planet. In my experience, they may struggle to explain things simply, right? Now, let me expand on this. Remember, a mentor by definition is really, really good at something. Now, if you're a great mentor, you're probably good at many, many things, but oftentimes there's 1 or 2 things that that mentor is really, really good at. In fact, they're so good, right? They get to a point of what we call, they are unconsciously competent. Unconsciously competent. So what that means is they're so good at it, they don't even need to think about it. Right? It's an automatic behavior. It's simply a habit that they've created. And the clear example of that would be someone like an executive chef, right? Someone who's an executive chef at a fancy 5-star hotel, they don't follow the recipe anymore, right? They're just freestyling and they're taking a little bit of that because they know what works well together. They don't even need to think about it. So that can be challenging when someone at that level needs to explain something to someone at this level, this is the junior, the beginner, the baby, right? They don't know what they don't know. So as the mentor, you really need to simplify the language and the way that you explain things, right? If you were to ask an executive chef, how did you make that beautiful dish? And they'll say something like, oh, well, you know, I just took a bit of this and a bit of that and I mixed it together and voila, right? So yeah, someone who's really, really good at something may have challenges explaining it to others. Yeah. So for example, I did a training with Toyota. And inside of my training room, it was basically a train the trainer program where they needed, I got the number one person of each technical department, the number one electrician, the number one person for gearboxes, the number one person for engines and so on. And these were the gurus. And so we had to help them take their knowledge and break it down into step-by-step, easy to understand systems and processes that the rest of the teams could understand, right? Because normally they would talk at this level here, it just goes over most heads. And the second area, the second trap is, instead of delegating, they don't delegate very well, they dump, right? So they think that they're mentoring, or they think that they're empowering others by delegating some task or project or something like that, but they're not delegating effectively. And so what they're doing, they're simply dumping that work, that project, that task, whatever it is, onto that person without the appropriate support, right? So don't do these two things, all right? You need to make sure you can explain the things that you know very, very well, explain them simply, and we don't dump. You want to effectively delegate. So becoming a master delegator looks like this. Right, I'm showing you here, guys, a step-by-step process on how to become a master delegator. And this is ideal for anyone currently in a leadership role, right? So for those of you who do have a team, you're leading a team, whichever level you are in the organization, you might be supervisor, mid-manager, or big boss, wherever you are on the spectrum, start with this. Number one is make an inventory of all of your daily, weekly, and monthly tasks. Because the reason is we don't know what we're doing on a day-to-day basis. Now, I know that sounds a little bit silly, but hear me out. You've heard me speak in other webinars before that 95% of the day we're operating from our subconscious programs, habits, and belief systems. So you're going through your day pretty much on autopilot, whether we're aware of it or not. So until you actually take a step back and really capture what it is that you're doing on a day-to-day basis, you'll be pleasantly surprised of how you're using your time. Or you'll be shocked at how unproductively you are using your time. So when I did this exercise for the very, very first time, when my mentor explained this to me, he simply said, Luke, take a notebook around with you in the day, keep it in your top pocket. Get your phone, set a reminder for every 30 minutes. And then every 30 minutes, beep, 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 you simply write down what were you doing for the last 30 minutes, right? And break it down into any increments you want to, whether it's 10 or 15-minute increments. I did this, I did this, I did this. Or I just did this. Because trust me, guys, if you just sit down at your desk and try to remember what you did, you know, throughout the day, chances are it won't be accurate. You could probably get a pretty good idea if you looked at your calendar and things like that, but we know things change and we don't always update that calendar. So the very, very first thing you want to do is take that daily inventory. So not only do you need this for delegation, guys, This is a mind-blowing exercise to improve your time management, right? So for time management workshops that I deliver, I also give them this exercise to begin with, yeah? So do this over 2 or 3 days, right? So you get a really accurate picture of where you are spending your time. I guarantee that most of you will be shocked at the unproductive time you're spending on certain things, or, which leads us to the next point, once you've made your inventory, you will notice there are things that pop out on your list that are very routine and very regular. So whatever you're doing on a routine or regular basis, often that means it's pretty easy, or there's a system and process in place for you to do that routine task. Yeah, so that is a perfect task that you can begin to start to delegate to your team. Because why? Number one, chances are it's pretty easy to delegate. Number two, it's going to free up your time so that you can focus on more important things. And those more important things might be things like coaching conversations or mentoring conversations or whatever else. All right. So that's step number two, begin to delegate the routine and regular tasks. Then again, once you've got your inventory, right? This all starts by having that clear inventory. I want you to consider what tasks can you delegate that will help the subordinate grow. So in other words, your direct report, their comfort zone is like this, yeah? Delegate something to them that's just a tiny little bit outside of their comfort zone. Why? Because you want to help them to grow. You want to stretch the boundaries of their thinking. And by doing so, by helping them to grow, you're actually going to create greater loyalty within your team. Why? Because one of the number one reasons why people leave an organization is a lack of opportunity for growth. So by delegating a task, a project, or whatever that's just a little bit outside of their comfort zone, what you're saying is, hey, I believe you. You can do it. I have faith that you can do this. I want you to grow. I'm thinking about your future, right? So next step, next point, trust them. Trust them, right? We cannot micromanage our team all of the time. At some point, you're going to have to trust them. It's better to start trusting them sooner rather than later. But again, that's why we've broken it into these smaller steps here, guys. Start with the routine and regular tasks that are a little bit easy, and then it kind of builds up your delegation muscle, right? Then you can take on those bigger tasks and projects and so on. Well, because guess what? As they are growing and they're taking on that extra responsibility, they're going to show you that I can do this, boss, right? I've got this, right? And so at some point, you're going to have to trust them. Okay, 1 second here, guys. Right, okay. So we had a question here. What, if any, is the difference between a formally appointed mentor, as in large organizations, and someone who chooses to mentor because he or she was applied upon? What a great question. Gosh, typically a formally appointed mentor would be what I call, and again, this is my language here, they're a bit of a jack or a Jill of all trades. So they often show proficiency and skill in many different areas. And so that's why they're in that place, because they can help many different people, right? And therefore giving a better return on investment for the organization. So they may have been a previous business owner or, managing director or GM. They're freelancing now and they've been appointed to that because they've got the experience, they've got the proven experience, and they're pretty good at multiple different areas. That's someone who would be appointed. But other than that, the processes that I'm sharing here today, Sue, are pretty much the same. Yeah. As B said, because the people with disability, I should play mentor role sometime. Okay. So you will need to play the mentor role whenever your team needs it. What you'll need to assess is where your team are at, the individuals, right? You can't exactly mentor your team as a whole. I would call that facilitation, where you're doing the group coaching and the brainstorming and so on. Mentoring is quite a personal process, right? So your level of mentoring, how deep you go, how much detail you share, how much hand holding you need to do will absolutely depend on the level of your mentee, where he or she is at. Think about it. If they've just joined your team, they know nothing about your culture or the organization or the way that you do things, even if they have experience in that industry. So yeah, you're going to need to spend more time with them versus someone who's maybe worked with you for 10 years and they've got a small promotion into another role. You might not need to spend as much time with them. However, you might need to spend some specific time in a specific area. Like I needed help in accounting skills, right? That became very, very urgent for me as the owner of the hotel asked me to prepare a budget. And I was like, a what now? Right? So you need to adjust to your mentee, right? And every mentee is going to be a little bit different. Oh, this is a great question to ask yourself, guys. Okay, Catherine, thank you. Coaching course certification from organizations. I can't comment about Coursera. I'm not sure about what they offer and whether they're certified or not. Our programs are certified, though, I can tell you that, Catherine. Okay, this is a great question you can ask yourself, guys. So if you're struggling to trust the team, right? If you're struggling to trust the team, ask yourself this question. If you were leaving the business next week or next month, what would you immediately need to delegate? Now, the chances are your answer to that would be everything, right? You need to delegate everything. So you want to start thinking of that now. You don't necessarily need to wait until that time happens in 1 year, 5 years, 10 years. Start thinking about if you were, and it might not be to leave the business. Maybe you get promoted to another division, right? Maybe you get promoted to country head, for example, still in the same organization, but in a very different territory. Guess what? You are going to need to delegate very, very quickly. So ask yourself that question and then notice what comes up. Now, here is the marriage, guys, between delegation and mentoring, right? Once you've done your inventory, right? Once you've decided what you're going to delegate, starting with those routine or regular tasks, and then kind of scaling it up to the bigger projects and so on, then, because remember, we don't dump, right? So effective delegation is about offering that support as necessary. And it will be a beautiful blend of mentoring and a little bit of coaching. So you will share with them those best practices, those strategies, those SOPs, the standard operating procedures. That will be the mentoring part. And, you know, I think of mentoring like my favorite uncle, you know, the older favorite uncle who's just like, especially like, you know, when I was a teenager, we have that uncle or auntie. They just seem to know everything, yeah? And so you kind of want to offer that level of support as a mentor, right? Not to say that it's all sunshine and rainbows. You do, as we covered before, as the mentor, you do need to give feedback. You do need to have those direct conversations. Why? Because your job as the mentor is to help them accelerate their journey in developing those specific skills, whether it's leadership or about a system or a process or whatever. So this is the process on how to become a master delegator. And here's a really, really simple framework, guys, to record your daily, weekly, monthly tasks. You just write them down on a list, okay? And then once you have that inventory staring you in the face, then here's another sample of you just decide what are you going to delegate, who are you going to delegate it to, and obviously by when. So this is your personal document that you would keep for yourself as an action plan for you to help you to consciously be doing more delegation, which is also aligned, guys, with your succession planning, right? So again, a lot of organizations right now, they are starting to consciously talk about and plan for the succession plan of the upper management. So again, if you can start thinking about that now, and you start to groom your team through a combination of training, coaching, and mentoring, that guidance and support, then guess what? As you close the gap between where you are and where they are, then the only way for you is going to be up, right? Or if you're already at the top, then it's going to free your time up to focus on the more important things, the new innovations, the newer projects, the new partnerships and collaborations, and so on. Awesome. So let me just quickly check the chat box. Yes, I can do that. Excellent, guys. All righty. So how to delegate effectively. So I'm going to go through this pretty quickly. Choose the right person for the job, right? So you've got the framework now of how to be a master delegator. Now we're kind of looking more at the details of how do you do it. Choose the right person for the job. Make sure that he or she has the proper training, okay? So they might need to attend some kind of technical training or specific training to be able to fulfill that role or task. And guys, willingness. The more willing your subordinate is, then guess what? Everything else becomes so much easier for you, right? They become more coachable. They become more mentorable. Their journey is going to accelerate much more quickly, right? So experience can be gained and knowledge can be gained as well. But that willingness, that is worth tenfold of everything else when you're choosing the right person. I think it's important to tell them why you have chosen him or her, and also why this task is important. So we often don't know the purpose or the reasons why we do what we do inside of an organization as a subordinate, right? As a more senior leader, yeah, you have the vision and you know more about the strategic purpose and so on, but often the more junior staff, they don't know why. So share with them why that you've chosen them, and then share with them why this particular task is so important to the organization, to the business. Because the more they know why, the more motivated they're going to be, which again is going to make your role much easier in the process. Delegate the entire task when possible. Define the task clearly and specify the results desired and any expectations. Now, again, I know this sounds pretty obvious, guys, and what we're trying to avoid here is that dumping, right? Where you say, hey, do this, and then you check back in 3 months' time and you wonder why it's a train wreck, right? Because it hasn't been delegated effectively. So define it clearly, share your expected desired results, and make sure you share any other expectations, which again, it might be so obvious for you because you've been doing that task for the last 5 or 10 years, but they don't know what they don't know. So make sure you do not make any assumptions and share your expectations clearly. Start time, end time, trust. All right. So yes, in the beginning, you might check in a little bit more regularly, right? And then over time, you might check back less frequently, you know, so once a day, twice a week, once a week, twice a month, once a month, and so on. So you're providing that coaching and the mentoring as necessary. You're not micromanaging. You're not looking over their shoulder every 5 minutes. But also you're not ghosting them and disappearing for 3 months, right? That's dumping. So check in as necessary and then less, and make sure you ask them, what do you need from me? Do you have any questions? How can I support you? Give him or her the resources and or the authority or the power that they need to get the job done. Otherwise, if you don't give them the authority, for example, they're going to keep running back to you every 10 minutes and say, oh, boss, is this okay? So make sure when we think about delegating the entire task that you give them the resources and the authority necessary. At the conclusion or halfway through, as you're going through, discuss any issues and offer constructive feedback as necessary. Now, it was really cool. I delivered similar content to this to my partners at Maxis in Malaysia. They're a big telecom company in Malaysia. And I taught them this content about a week ago. And then I had a follow-up session today with them. And I said, how did you guys go? Specifically with this, with the mentoring process by creating their inventory. And then the tasking was between sessions. I said, you must delegate at least one task to your team. I said, how did you go? And one of the ladies shared with me this process that I'm going to call empowered delegation. And I told her that I'd be stealing this from her to share with the audience here tonight. I thought this was brilliant. And what I love about this, it's even more simple than the slide that we just shared. So let's take a look. So similar to what we mentioned on the last slide, share the purpose of the task to be delegated, right? So here is the task. Why is this important to the business? Why is it important that you know how to do this? What impact is this particular task having on the rest of the organization? So again, when people know the purpose and the why, they're going to be more motivated. Number two, this is the cool part that I like, share the opportunity potential to the individual for them to take on this task. So for example, if one of the tasks that you need to delegate is that your subordinate needs to make some kind of presentation to the big boss, right? Or at the big boss meeting or something. So you can say to them, listen, the opportunity for you in delivering this presentation is that you're going to have an audience with the big boss. They're going to get to see you shine. You're going to have an opportunity to be maybe mentored or guided by those people with more experience and, right? So all of the opportunities for that individual to take on the responsibility and the ownership of that new task. Share the details and the expectations, which we already covered. Now, this next point was the one that blew me away. This lady, she did this as a group with her team, right? So she had a team of about 6 people. She went through all of these points first together with the team. And then she said, who would like to take on this task, right? So rather than telling them what to do directly or telling you do this, you do that, she said, who wants it, right? And then someone put up their hand and maybe she already had an idea of who she was going to put into this role. Either way, I thought this was a really empowered way to empower the team. Think about it. If that person volunteered, you know that they're committed. You know that they're going to take ownership and responsibility. This is successful implementation of that task or that project. Yeah. And again, coach and mentor as necessary. So this is where we bring it all back together, guys. The effective delegation is a perfect vehicle for you to be able to effectively coach and mentor your teams, right? And this is for the existing team members. I think if you've got someone joining the team new, it's pretty obvious there where your mentoring hat would come on, right? You're going to share with them the best practices and so on. You're going to help get them up to speed more quickly. I'm talking here about really empowering your team to that next level. All right, question. If the volunteer isn't capable, then how to manage? Yeah, good question. I'm not sure how she would handle that. We ran out of time. I had exactly the same question. Like, what do you do? Now, she did say something like, I had someone in mind, is what she told to me. And she said, and the group kind of had an idea who they thought was going to be nominated for the role. So is there a bit of risk in doing it with the group? Yeah, there's a little bit of a risk in doing it with the group. So I'll leave it up to you guys. If you want to do it with the group, you can try that out. Or if you want to more consciously think of that succession planning and how you want to develop your teams and how the mentoring can fit in with that individually, then you might choose that path as well, right? Yeah, if they're not capable, then, well, you'll need to address what specifically is it they are not capable. Is it their people skills? Is it their technical skills? Is it something else with their current role that is not yet fulfilled? There are obviously many reasons that would need to be addressed there first, which you would not want to do that in the group environment. However you deal with that, it would need to be handled one-on-one. All right. What are the few factors to be considering prior to access to assigning mentees into specific groups? Yeah, good one. The short answer, Catherine, is I don't know. All right, just for the limit of time that we have here. What I would say, I mean, think about this. Organizations normally identify what they call key talent. So if you are a proactive leader, you will have your eye on the key talent, people that you think could be up to the task. So to answer your question, Catherine, if you've got a team of 20, you probably won't bring all 20 in. You will have already identified some key talent based on what? Willingness, right? Willingness, for me, willingness has to be number one, because if they're willing to learn and willing to get the experience, that's okay. So willingness, number one, and they do need to show some level of competence or skill in the area that you're looking to delegate for them. All right, so that's the short answer on that one, Catherine. I hope that helps. All right, so to wrap it up here, guys, how are we going for TikTok? Perfect. So to sum it all up, guys, the 5 tips for best mentoring practices. Start practicing your effective delegation today, right? So the sooner you can start to delegate, the sooner you have an opportunity to mentor, right? Let me say that again. The sooner that you can start to effectively delegate, remembering that delegation is the vehicle that enables you to mentor more often, then start doing that for all the benefits and the reasons that we've already covered. You're helping them grow, you're helping yourself to grow, you're helping your business and your department to grow to the next level. So start tomorrow, in the next couple of days, get your little notebook, walk around for the next couple of days, set your timer for every 30 minutes and capture where you're spending your time. I guarantee you, you'll be surprised one way or another. Number 2, support the delegation with a blend of telling and mentoring, all right? So, sorry, by telling and asking. So that blend of mentoring and coaching, that telling and asking. So again, you've decided what you're going to delegate. You've decided who you're going to delegate to, all right? And then as you're supporting through that delegation process, because you're not dumping, that is when you get to put your coaching and mentoring hat on, right? Where you'll tell them and you'll guide them and you'll check in with them. How are you going? You are their rock, right? You are their raving fan to help them achieve success. Because guess what? Their success is your success. Their failure is your failure. So you want to make sure that you set them up to win, right? And how do you do that? Is by coaching and mentoring and guiding them as necessary. Again, adjusting to the needs of the mentee, right? So you need to create that safe environment, that psychological safety that empowers them to ask questions, right? Share ideas, bring up concerns, or maybe even share some mistakes that they've made along the way. That can only happen if you have that level of respect and trust with them that they feel so safe and open to be able to share with you, right? Because again, the more open and transparent they are, then the greater the chance of success. Yeah. Next one. Yeah. Co-create SOPs as necessary. So SOP, standard operating procedure. Think of an SOP as like a recipe on how to do that specific job. Now, depending on the size of your organization and depending on your role within the organization, you may already have SOPs or you may not have any SOPs. So many years ago, when I left a more corporate style working environment, I decided, it was quite quick, I decided that I was going to leave that organization in 2 months. Yeah, so I had a 2-month window. Now, in that particular role, I was the managing director, and we were a small team. There were only maybe 12 of us all together in that organization. But then coming back to that question before, what if you leave the business next week? What do you need to delegate? Well, the answer was everything. So I thought, wow, I've only got 2 months to do all this. How am I going to do this? So what did I do? I co-created an SOP with each member of the staff who I was delegating to. So if you remember the example about an executive chef, when you ask him or her, how do you do it? They'll say, I don't know, I just do it. And I was kind of like that in some of my tasks, because we're like, I don't know, I just do it. So what I did, so for example, there was one lady who I delegated the marketing responsibilities to. She came in and sat with me, let's call her Mary. And I said, okay, Mary, I'm going to show you how I create the newsletter and do the Google ads, right? For example. And of course, I needed to break those down simply into those step-by-step tasks. So one is creating the newsletter. One is doing Facebook ads. One is doing Google ads. 3 very, very separate processes, which she did not know that she did not know. So what I did was I showed her what I was doing on the computer as I was doing it. And Mary was sitting next to me taking notes. She was creating the recipe, the step-by-step strategic process on how I did that particular task. Right? Now, her and I had a great relationship. We were very open and trusting. So if I was moving too quickly, she would tell me to slow down. All right. And then when we finished one little section, I said, okay, read it back to me, please. All right. And then basically we created the SOP. So for the very, very first thing that we did, which was creating the newsletter, for example, we did it together. I coached her, I guided her, I asked her questions, I showed her, push this button, push that button, make sure you write it down. She had to capture every single little detailed step because no one else knew how to do it. So we were in effect creating the SOP. Then we went through it. She went and typed it up all nicely. She came back to me again. We looked at it together. I said, what do you think? Right. So again, we were doing a combination of coaching and mentoring. I said, all right, are you ready to do your first one? And she's like, yeah. And I gave her the content or whatever. She just had to put it into that format and set it all up. And then she did it. And then I said, okay, let's take a look. And she came back into the office. I said, so tell me, how was the process for you? She said, and here's the kicker, guys. Are you ready for this? So I said, how was this for you, Mary? How was it doing this process? And she said, oh my goodness, Mr. Luke, this was so much fun. I really enjoyed this. She said, oh, gee, I wish you had have taught me this earlier. So what does Luke say to himself? Gosh, I wish I had have taught you this earlier. I wish I had the trust in you to be able to hand off this, by the way, which was a very repetitive task, right? But I'd fallen into the trap. This is many years ago. I'd fallen into the trap that no one can do it as good as me. No one can do it as professional as me, which of course is BS, right? And so I never forgot that. And that reminds me now, what if I'm leaving next week, right? And so as a result of that, as I was leaving that company, we came up with 20 or so beautiful SOPs for each of those little individual tasks that I was responsible for, that was then shared out through each of the appropriate people inside of that organization. So as I left, I felt good. I felt that I'd passed on the knowledge that was up here, and there was a lasting document, right, that could show anyone at any time how to do that, right? So an SOP is a form of mentoring, right? Then, you know, if you've already got SOPs and you've got the new employee, you get them sitting next to you, you walk them through the SOP and you say, okay, let's go for it. And then you guide them along the process. Does that make sense, guys? Yes or yes? Good. For best mentoring, guys, as you mentioned before in those great qualities of a mentor, embrace questions, right? Because again, your level is here, their level is here. You want to encourage questions. You want to ask them regularly. Any questions? How's it going? How can I support you? What do you need from me? What resources do you need? What is missing, right? You want to elicit from them as many questions as you can. So you ask the questions to get the questions to help the process to be nice and smooth. Does this make sense? Yeah? Yes, it does. Excellent. Thank you for that, Catherine. Okay, and lucky last, guys. Lucky last is continuous learning and development. So yeah, if you want to be a great mentor wherever you are on your leadership journey, here's the thing, and what I'm talking about here, guys, is the mindset of continuous learning and development. Because here's the thing, regardless of how high you are in the organization, you could be the global CEO of the universe, right? When you display that growth mindset of continual growth and development, you are walking the talk. Your team, they will respect that, because they see you even at that level that you're continually doing a little bit of this, you're reading, you're attending an odd workshop here or there, you're sharpening the saw, you're asking questions of things you don't know. Did you know there's a concept called reverse mentoring? Yeah, Google it, right? So what does reverse mentoring means is that even you as the CEO, you could bring in the new intern, someone who's just been 1 week in your organization, and you can learn something from them. Yeah, reverse mentoring, check it out. So yeah, as long as you display, guys, that continuous growth, that growth mindset, that will make your life a lot easier, because the level of respect will be much, much higher. And then of course, you'll create a beautiful synergy as you're mentoring your teams to that next level of success. So that's it for today, guys. Just to wrap up, as always, NLP training next week. This is your last chance. Join us here in Bangkok. Join us online. However you want to join us, join us. It's only 50,000 baht for payment in full. We do have convenient monthly payment plans. Our certifications are internationally recognized by the American Board of NLP, the largest authority for NLP, and the ICF, the International Coaching Federation, which is the world's largest coaching authority. And if coaching is more your thing, then come along for the ICF Leadership Coaching Certification, which is the following week, 20 to 21 of November. Again, you can join us here in Bangkok. You can join us virtually from anywhere in the world. Please go back to that slide. Thank you very much. That was the slide that had the definition of mentoring. Is that slide here, right? So that was the slide to help that person with that question. Excellent, guys. So again, thank you all very, very much for joining me this evening. I hope you enjoyed as much as I have today. I love this topic of mentoring, and you guys stay safe, stay awesome. Come and join us next week or the week after for the NLP or the ICF. It would be wonderful to see you there. Until then, guys, take it easy and stay cool, man. Bye for now.